Oh, there we go. So we'll call the June 2nd meeting for the City of Huntington Woods Historic District Commission. And the first agenda item is the approval of the May 5th, 2021 meeting minutes. Hopefully everybody received that via email from Hank. And at this time, I'd like to see if there are any comments or changes that are required for those meeting minutes. Steve, looks like you're trying to talk. Just want to make sure before I move on.
I'm gonna unmute here.
Okay.
I had a comment, and it's more not of something that wasn't included, or maybe was subtly included. And I'm just wondering if there's consensus to add more detail. Mike Ostrowski, apparently a number of times during his presentation, had indicated that the replacement windows at the, I don't know at Beth's residence, Radner's residence, he had indicated that they were like identical and in all measurements and dimensions as the original windows that they were replacing. And I didn't think that the minutes really demonstrated that.
Are we talking about my residence or?
No, we're talking about the minutes from the
Oh,
last meeting.
sorry.
If there's any differing view or no consensus, it's kind of, I'm okay with it. I mean, the motion passed, but he seemed a number of times to want to make that point. I didn't find it indicated in the minutes.
If it's the pleasure of the commission, I can add that.
I think that'd be great, Hank, if you could just add that to the meeting minutes. Does
Yeah,
anybody else have-
I'll let the minute taker know, and she'll actually hear this and she'll add it in.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on the meeting minutes?
I just want to comment on Steve's comment. Despite his, repeatedly saying that they're identical, they're not identical. A lot of the features are of a similar size, but they were a double pane where the existing are single pane. And I don't know if we should ask applicants to, make that distinction because if it goes in the record that things are identical and they're not, it's not an identical. The technology on the window is completely different. Hank, maybe I defer to you on what is appropriate for the record, because we know that they're not replacing like for like. They're just, it's just a similar, sizes of the wood sash essentially.
Right, your point's well taken, Jim, and I think what you can do is that you can leave it as is, and then with the motion getting through, with the understanding that there is a record of what was said. And I thought actually that one of you, it might have even been you, Jim, that called out some detailed questions with him that he went through. So rather than list like everything, they're not going to list verbatim, but their minutes should be an accurate reflection of what happened at the meeting. So if it's the pleasure of the board to add more detail, then you should do it. The other thing that I can also do is, what I can't have is a discrepancy between what one commissioner might like to see and what another commissioner might like to see, because we're not going to rewrite the minutes from that. But the other thing that I could do is I can ask the minute taker to actually try to include more detail and more thoroughness in her minute taking. And that might help solve our problems or questions in the future.
So Hank, if you go to the bottom of page 2 and actually have the minute taker put page numbers on, that'd be helpful.
Yep.
But I think maybe, if you want to share screen or something like that, I'll just read it. It just says, Jim basically said the windows need to be compatible with the original as close as possible. And Michael responded, planning to match the windows that are failing identical to existing mutton styles, rails are same dimensions, 8/8. If maybe Steve, if that satisfies enough detail where we're really, that might help.
That satisfies me. And Hank, I had the same kind of thoughts. So you had to maybe just a little bit more detail overall.
Yeah,
Might be,
I think we
little
can
better.
accomplish that just by talking to her.
I'm okay with the minutes as stands. Thank you for pointing that out, Chris.
So if there are no further comments, I'd like to see if someone can make a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
Motion to approve as is.
So thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Jim will second. Hank, do I need to do a roll call vote on meeting minutes as well?
You should you should do it for all of them. And I
Okay,
think we're
thank
going
you.
back.
I'll be a Robert.
Abstaining, wasn't present at the meeting.
Okay, Steve,
Yes.
Mark. Reading.
Mark,
lips,
you're
I look
muted.
like yes. Give me a thumbs up, Mark, and that'll be good for now.
You hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, that was a yes for me.
Jim,
Yes.
and welcome, Martha. Martha.
Yes,
Thank you, and I'll be a yes as well. So the meeting minutes pass.
thank
So
you.
we'll roll right into our applications. The first application today is the matter of the addition to the Zacharias residence at 26405 Hendry. And I see Mr. Zacharias is present, and the floor is yours if you'd like to make a presentation on your proposal.
Yeah, sure. So obviously this is a returning proposal. I came back the first time. I was lacking some details around the color of the siding, pavers, windows, and some details. So I addressed those details and reissuing the permit. So it sounded like everybody was fine with the overall concept and theme. It was just lacking the details of like I said, the pavers, which I attached with pavers. We plan to use, what color siding and the type of wood side, the pre-painted wood siding. The columns are going to be, we're going to wrap the columns. They're 6x6 columns, so we'll wrap those in white trim boards that match the rest of the white trim of the house. So yeah, I guess if there's any, questions, concerns, I, definitely would like to hear them.
So Hank, would you like to give any report on
Yeah.
this project? And
I'm
then
gonna
we
keep
can
it
certainly go through it.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty brief just because the issues just was consistently lack of detail. And what you have to decide now is at the point is, has Mr. Zacharias reached a level of detail that you're comfortable with? If there are things that are not on the plans that you need to include in a motion so that it will be part of the record, you should do that. So if you're lacking detail, you feel, or if you feel like there's some questions that you have that you need answers for, now would be the time to do that. But if there's anything that is not on the plan that you would like included or you need to see included for your level of comfort with this, then you should include those in the motion. Thank you.
So we'll just go around through the commissioners as an opportunity to ask some questions of the applicant. Robert, you're on the screen first today, so would you please go right ahead?
Thank you. Mr. Zacharias, do you have any specifications on those Marvin windows and doors, what models they are?
Yeah, I could pull it up. I forwarded those to Hank, but they're the exact same Marvin windows that we replaced the rest of the house with. I forgot the exact. I mean, they're white clad on the outside, wood on the inside. So they're not the inexpensive ones, but they match the like I said, they're the exact trim line or window line as the rest of the house. So when we purchased the house 4 or 5 years ago, of course, they had all the older windows in it. We replaced them with the Marvin double hungs, and they, matched almost exactly with what was there before. So And we're just trying to keep the same, if you want to say that, just keep the same product throughout the house, so it's all consistent.
I really don't have any more questions, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Steve, you're up next on the grid, so you get to go next.
Okay, thank you. There's a comment in our packet that I would need some clarification on. And this is from you, Hank, on page 1, where it says, point number 3, the building official is determining if the structure as started would even be allowed to stay.
Yeah, that was back from this. What I've done is I've tried to keep like the things on here that we went from the very beginning with this. So Dwayne, at this point in time, who is our building official, is apparently, but that'll go on afterwards. Apparently he had some level of comfort with the idea of the footings and the foundation for this. That will be something that will be determined by the building official. So even if these plans, once they're done here, Mr. Zacharias still has to get a building permit. So all of those details will be gone over by him anyway.
Okay. The next question I have is, well, first of all, I just want to comment. I'm getting a little better perspective of this thing. And it seems like an oddly proportioned structure to me, although I don't know that that's necessarily part of my decision-making factor, but it just seems like it's very long and shed-like. And that, it just seems like it's out of proportion in a length situation relative to the width of it, kind of almost hallway-like, I found, and it just seems a little clunky to me for that, or a little unusually intuitively to me. And that's just a comment that I'm making about the structure. I'm not asking for a response necessarily. There are some unilock pavers that are being used in here. And I'm not sure from any of the drawings I have where they're covering and the size of the area, and whether or not any current landscaping or any trees or anything would have to be removed to accommodate it. So I'm just need some more clarification on the footprint of where those pavers are going, what type of area they're covering.
So I guess in the short term, they're going to basically just go underneath the patio. In the long term, I'm hoping to go across the back of the house. The one thing I need to do is make sure that I don't exceed the percentage of, if you want to say, I guess there's a percentage or a ratio of hard surface to landscaping that needs to be maintained. So, but yeah, so the picture that you see has a proposal like with a pool. We're probably not going to do a pool. So the patio would stop at the end of the covered patio or the covered area. And then the rest would be grass. So like in the picture, if you see on page 1, you see like a little clipping of a pool. So we were having the designers, like I said, drawing a pool if we wanted to go that direction. But if we do it wouldn't be this year. It'd be probably next year, or if we're lucky later this year, we would address it. But this year, we're just trying to get the structure done and some of the patio done.
Okay, well, the only drawing that I see that indicates anything relative to the pavers show them totally surrounding and encroaching on the rest of the yard, and not only underneath the structure, unless there's something else in this packet that I'm missing.
No, probably not, because I wasn't really thinking that we were going to address the patio or the patio size, because I'm just trying to worry about getting this roof line put back, or this roof put back on the back of my house. And like I said, the pavers were something that in the last meeting they wanted to know what pavers I planned on using. So I just wanted to address, like, yeah, when we do the pavers, it's going to be the ones I had listed, the Uniblock Bristol Valleys.
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Chair, I'm sorry.
Go on, Hank.
Steve, I might help you out here a little bit if I could, Mr. Chair. the pavers in and of themselves and a pool, if any, would be things that would be an administrative approval in the rear yard.
Mhm.
What I would require in order to have that administrative approval is I would need him to meet the rest of the zoning ordinance, which dictates that you can't cover over 50% of your rear yard with the structure. So he would have to demonstrate that in order to get that done. So for now, if he's indicating to the commission that he's looking simply to cover the area under the patio, then the motion should reflect that if you're so inclined to favor him with a motion, so that it's not put into that. He'll have to reapply for that. But normally for that, he would not have to come back to the Historic District Commission.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I was just trying to determine what was being requested right now in
Yeah.
this particular proposal. And you know what, that's all I have for right now. That's fine, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Mark, you're up next.
Yeah, Steve has brought up the issue that concerned me the most, and that's the scope and extent of the pavers. I don't have a problem with the pavers under the covered area, but there's nothing in the documents submitted that indicate the proposed scope. I would not object to that, provided that the boundaries of the paved area not extend beyond the walls of the structure and the columns at the far end of the structure. Other than that, I don't have any comments.
Jim, you're up next. Jim, you're still on mute though. Sure, it was brilliant.
The double mute, yeah. All right, okay, so same comments on the pavers. Hank, would he need to come back if he was going to put down a larger area, or is that all administrative? We're just here to blast the color and the materiality.
That would be the administrative approval.
Got it.
But what it would be is if it deviated or went anything like that, he could run afoul of the zoning ordinance and require both appearance back to the HDC, because if it needs a variance, he's going to have to come back here too. And then he's also going, not for a variance, because that's the zoning board of appeals. It might necessitate 2 meetings, or he'll have to make the patio smaller. And I don't know that that's the case at all, because I don't have any dimensions or anything like that to go off of. And I don't have anything on the pool other than the little clip in the bottom left corner of the picture.
Yeah. Okay, great. The other comment I have, it's just a little maybe point of clarification or confusion. I'm looking at the rendering that was supplied here, and then I'm looking at the photos of the back of the house. And I think you're going to run into an issue with the roof line of the addition of the covered patio, this gable roof. And the windows on page 1 look much smaller and a higher sill than the photos of the actual house. So it's more like a point of like, hey, check this out before you start framing the roof. If that roof is going to hit those windows as it goes back, you probably got a problem there. So I would just make sure that because you haven't given us a slope to the roof. So
yeah,
doing a calculation
it's a 12, I believe. It's a
412.
412.
Oh, did I miss that? Okay.
Yeah, so it's a 412 with plenty of room under the windows. So we could, even the drip edge, after they drip edge it, it won't come close to the windows, or there'll be a gap under the window. Okay.
Just also remember, like snow. You could get snow up against your windows if there's not a significant, amount of space there. I just want to make clear that rendering is not an accurate portrayal of the back of the house. Then I guess the question is, If you do run into an issue there, I think you want to, come back and get that, revised. That to me is something that we don't want to go, because I guess this is a little bit like maintenance of your house, but anything, you go too low on slope, you should really should not use asphalt shingles, that kind of thing. So just a point to be wary of. Otherwise, I don't think I have any other comments at this time.
A clarification, Mr. Chair, that might help with Jim's point is that if there was a situation where the plans came in and there was a deviation, or there was a field deviation with the roof, he would have to come back, or that's not something that we would administratively approve. Because that's going to change the distance between the windows and the roof and change proportion and relation. And, it may create a situation which would put the windows that are on the back of the house in jeopardy by virtue of the pitch of the roof.
Any other comments, Jim?
That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, Martha, you're up.
It sounds like everybody's covered everything. I just had a quick question because it says on the photograph here, well, you cite Uniblock Bristol Valley, but when I looked up Uniblock, that was some kind of a concrete like form. And I just want to double check. Is that what your intention was for the pool?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a Unilock. That's that's a typo.
Okay.
Because on page 3, it shows a sample of the paver.
Right,
So,
I saw that, but
yep,
you
it's
had this
Unilock.
a little bit of a
Uniblock.
pool here, and I was wondering what the pool is going to be.
Yeah, that's out of scope. Yeah, we when they were doing this drawing, we were toying around with, if we did a pool, where it would go. And when they gave me the latest drawings, I forgot to tell them to just take the pool out. So that's why I kind of cropped it out, because it's not within scope of what we plan on doing in the next 9 months.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Chair, one other point of clarification is on the survey, it shows that Mr. Zacharias has a tree of substance that would be approximately where the pool would be going. So he would need to come back to have that before he put in the pool, and that would be what would bring the pool back. Other than that, it could be administrative, but if he's going to affect that tree, which is listed as a 24-inch tree, he would have to come back to the Historic District Commission for that.
All right, so I just probably have a couple questions. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for what I was missing here. So Hank, the existing building sticks out like 13.4 feet, and then they're going 20 feet on top of that. Is that dimensionally what you have?
That's what I have. That's what I have as well.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that there's some dimensional controls. It's tough because there's some missing. I just wanted to be clear about that. And then the way this is being portrayed, that there is no enclosure at the gable on the, I guess it would be the west side of the roof. There's an open truss. And is that going to be trimmed out and finished? I guess that's for Mr. Zacharias.
Oh, yeah. I guess. Where are you saying that there's an opening?
So this is on page 2 of 3 of your drawings. It's an elevation of the gable end, and it's showing a double or a 2x8 wood rafter, and it's showing a triple 10-inch LVL, and then there's looks like kind of like a king post.
Oh yeah. No, it's gonna be it's gonna look more like the front page where it's gonna be trimmed out.
So there will be siding over that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
that match everything else.
And then when I look at these elevations, just as a point of clarification, so right now there's no corner boards. There's no trim, there's no sills around the windows. Is it your intent that you're going to have some of that trim detail on these drawings?
As minimum as I need to do to make the, wrap the corners and wrap the windows. I don't want to have a big old 4-inch white board surrounding my windows. So, but if I need to put any kind of trim to trim it out, you know, I'm going to do the minimum, the minimum size required to do it. Because none of the windows on the house have, like, you know, because it's a brick house, so all the windows are just a tight, you know, just the trim inside the brick. So try to maintain that look and feel.
It's true.
You might also, sorry, I'll wait my turn.
You know, Jim, if you have a comment, you know, feel free. If
Well,
that's
I'm
opened
just-
up anything.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the, yeah, you have a small dormer on your roof that does have trim on it. So typically we would trim out in a different way, anything that's a window and siding versus a window within a brick opening.
Mhm.
So just maybe use that as a guide as you look for trim profiles. But I'm looking at the front page here, which does shows more trim around the windows, and it's called out as such. Or not, I guess the trim is not called out, but it's visually there.
Right.
And, you know, none of the detail from the front of the house where the gable has, looks like a rake board plus, looks like an OG trim on it. It's just going to be flat trim stock to trim this all out. Is that correct?
There isn't, because like on the back of the house, there isn't like an OG, like it's kind of like stacked. So there's like 2 layers, if you want to say. Then there's like an OG trim under it. So there's a little bit of detail.
So you're intending to bring that all around both the eaves as well as the gable?
Right. Yep.
So it's consistent with the existing house?
Yep.
I think that's it for now. I would just always recommend that it's worth the investment to always tighten up your drawings. It just certainly helps us navigate this. And though you've added some detail, it's challenging when, you know, a lot of the drawings sort of show us something, but they're, you know, even the proportions on the columns are showing the 6x6. I know you've indicated you're going to trim them out, but it's always helpful to allow us to make better informed decisions if we can understand what the finished product is going to look like. It just helps us to be, so we're not imagining what we imagine in our mind, and it's in black and white, which allows us something to judge on. So that's my commentary. I'm done.
I
So
do have a follow-up question.
Go right ahead,
It's
Steve.
okay.
Yep.
Mr. Zacharias, are you going to be doing this work yourself, or is there a contractor? or
I
builder that would
have
be
a
doing-
guy that's helping me out, but yeah, I'm on site.
Hank, are these drawings in any way adequate if you were to turn them over to somebody to complete this sort of structure? Or does it need intimate interaction with the owner to, in essence, clarify every single little
He's going to
element.
need to clarify, the building official's going to want some things clarified as to how he plans on doing things. So whatever motion you favor him with, he still has to go through the building official in order to get his permit for this. And the building official's going to want to know, you know, how things are being trimmed out, you know, whether it's a brick mold, whether it's a, you know, 1x, whatever it is that he's using. He may have to clarify some things for the building official when he looks at it, but this will allow him to get to the building official and have those discussions. But do I think that these plans as they sit right now are going to be okay for Dwayne? I wouldn't think so. I would think he might have a couple questions. What those may be, I would leave to him, because it's really not my province to say or to speak on it. And if you're approving this, he's just going to have to make it so that the building official has plans that would meet code.
Okay, well, my only question is that there's been a lot of questions asked of which are not reflected on the plans, and there's been answers that have been given of which, you know, I found the answers generally acceptable, but there's no documentation to know that that consistency is going to be there, like a playbook to know that what was said is what is going to be
Yeah.
done.
Well, that's why, and to your point, Steve, that's why, we talked at the beginning that it should be reflected in the motion. So then what will happen is that when I compare the drawings that come in for building permit, those drawings will need to reflect the decisions and the discussions that were made tonight. And it will need to reflect what the motion says. If the motion says he's got to use 1x4 trim around the windows, then he's got to use 1x4 trim around the windows. And say 1x2, he's got to use 1x2, that type of thing. And then and anything else, so anything else like that you would want reference, or that you feel would be an important detail and you feel that it's lacking from the documentation that we have to date, that should be spelled out in the motion.
Okay, thank you. One other question, Mr. Zacharias, are you going to be pulling the permits, or will they be a licensed individual pulling the permits?
I'll be.
Or are
pulling-
you licensed? I don't know, maybe you're both.
I'm not licensed, but I'll be pulling permits.
So as a homeowner, you'll pull your own permits and you won't have a licensed builder or anything pulling permits. Okay, thank you.
So Hank, I'm gonna just ask a favor because I'm gonna move on to public participation, but if you could just real quick, while I'm moving to public participation, my copies are kind of grainy, and since I didn't get this digitally, would you mind just pulling up that 3D rendering? It might help us when we
No, not a problem.
think about a motion, because it might inspire us to think about what kind of detail. So at this time, if possible, if I would like to just sort of switch to.
Is that good? Is that good for you, Chris?
That's perfect. So that'll help us, I think, as we navigate. But at this time, I just wanted to make sure that we address the public participation. So if there's anyone who is on the call from the public, and like to speak about this application, could you please just state your name and address for the record? And now's the time to place your comments. Doesn't appear that we're going to get any public participation. So Hank, at this time, I'll close the public participation. So I guess at this point in time, we're looking for someone from the commission to put forth a motion, and then we can have some discussion about that motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion the project be denied, that there is insufficient detailed information being provided. There are too many questions unanswered and nebulous information.
Give details of what's missing. Because everything that was addressed was.
Point of order.
Yeah. When you have questions of that, this is a motion, a time for motion and a second. There's discussion and the commission can choose to do that, assuming the motion gets a second.
I second.
So we have a motion on the floor to deny the application based upon insufficient details or discussion amongst the commissioners. I'm just going to open it up to anybody and just wave your hand or something if you'd like to talk about it. I'll make a couple. Oh, go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
If this motion fails, it does, Hank, you can confirm this, that it does not mean that what Mr. Zacharias is proposing is approved then. It still would need a motion for approval, correct?
You would still need a motion for approval. If, for example, that motion garnered just the maker in the second, and it didn't get the 4 votes necessary to pass, an inverse motion to pass would then be in order.
Thank you.
So the reason I just wanted to pull up this 3D image is because it does display some different characteristics than are on the two-dimensional elevations, and as a point of, what exactly are we approving? This shows some different level of detail. It does show, obviously, the post down in the leading edge, but then applied to the facade, it looks almost like there's a wide trim board that is recreating almost like an engaged pilaster, which is, sort of reminiscent to what's happening on the front of the house. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just pointing it out. It does express a water table. It does, show the siding at the gable end. And so there is some level of detail here that is different. And that's why I was asking some questions about the elevations, because I do find it a bit difficult to understand everything that's out there. Obviously, so how does the building official sort of take our motion and then apply it?
Well, the motion, I'm sorry, Chris, the motion will be transcribed into the documents Mr. Zacharias would have to turn in to get his building permit. So if you call out in a motion, and again, if it's a favorable motion, that's not what we have on the table right now. But if you were to, let's say, for example, if this motion failed and someone was to make a positive motion, then what would have to happen is you would have to call out that the details replicate this, the details replicate this, and, be specific in what it is. So I would have some basis in fact checking the plans when they come in. So before they even get to Dwayne, that I would have the Historic District Commission requirements covered before they got to the building requirements.
So at this time, we have a motion on the floor with the second. Is there any further discussion? So, okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Robert, I'm just going to go through official. Sorry, I'm just going to call on everyone, even though you may have made the motion, just because I want to make it official. So Robert,
Yay.
Steve,
No.
Mark,
Well,
I'm sorry, was that a no? I couldn't hear you.
I had him as a no.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my bad headphones. I lost my good headset. Jim? You're on mute, Jim.
No,
Martha,
Yay.
and I'll vote no. So the motion did not pass. Is that correct, Hank? Did I count right?
That is correct.
So we have
You
an
would need an-
opportunity. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You would need an alternative motion.
all right, I will move to approve the project. I believe we now have sufficient information to make a decision. So I would move to approve based on standard 3, with the provision that the pavers be confined to the area under the covered portion of the addition.
Any additional detail needed on that motion before we get a second? Well, I guess that can be, there's
It
a
can
motion.
be
on the floor.
seconded for discussion, and then
Correct.
it could be amended should that be the course of action that the commission wants to take.
Well, for course of action, I would move to include to issue a certificate of appropriateness.
Do we have a second on this motion?
You can second for purposes of discussion.
I would second the motion.
So let's have some discussion. Do we want to go around the room, or do you want just, if you have a comment, just chime in?
I'll chime in. I feel like a certificate of appropriateness would be endorsing the design to a level that we feel comfortable. I echo the concerns that we don't have enough detail here to fully understand the scope. However, this is on the rear of the house, is not visible from the front elevation. It generally, as you know, I think we maybe want to roll into a motion that it resemble what is in the three-dimensional rendering rather than the two-dimensional drawings. But I think a notice to proceed is a better avenue here rather than a certificate of appropriateness.
Jim, if you're offering that as an amendment, you would need the second and the maker to accept that.
I guess I could make that an amendment.
Can we add just a couple more pieces to that while we're doing it then? I mean, I agree with that the three-dimensional rendering, when we start to look at, you know, siding at the gabled ends, we're starting to see that the, you know, obviously that the eaves align, all these things are positives. We are seeing some semblance of a water table. Is there anything else? I mean, when we look at how detailed are we going to get here? Are just plain square columns enough for everybody? I mean, is there any other detail that anybody has that we need to add? I think we should do it now, just so that the motion has the teeth in it that we need to have.
All right. Notice, so Hanks, what I want to just like call this an amendment to Mark's motion, and then, you know, list off what makes sense as Chris is asking.
That would be the way to, that would be the best way to amend it, Jim.
Do we want to have any other discussion on Mark's motion prior to that
Well,
description?
you can offer the amendment, but if there's a level of comfort, if Mark and Steve feel comfortable with what you're offering as an amendment, they'll allow the friendly amendment to their motion. And at that point in time, that will be their endorsement of your comments.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, I
So I'd like
approve,
to make it,
I approve the amendment.
Hank,
I'm okay with the amendment too.
Hank,
Yes,
Robert's lost his connection and he's having trouble getting back on.
he
Is
isn't, I don't see him in the waiting room.
Is there a way to have him dial in just so that he can participate? So I'd hate to lose his voice. We could
Yeah,
ask
on
him
the
just to
agenda
dial
are
in his
on
phone.
the agenda are the numbers to dial in on. If he wants to, he can, hold on a second here. He's out.
Yeah, so he could try to dial in on his phone. Sometimes
Or he
that's
can
more
try to
successful.
reconnect. He can try to reconnect if you want to wait a minute for him.
No, I think it'd be to everyone's benefit to have his voice in this discussion and obviously the voting.
Hang on, I'm texting him right now to sign in.
So I'll just add a couple comments then in the silence to fill the air that.
Okay, he's back. He's joining right now.
Perfect. So Jim, I guess I would agree that it is on the rear of the house. You really have to look, it's not visible from the front. So I agree that the overall proportions, there's a little bit more latitude, even though I'm the one who did bring up the lack of detail. So that's why I'm just asking for the clarity in the motion. That's why I brought up the 3D, because I think it did a better job of representing hopefully what the intent is. That might give us enough of a reference point to see if we can move things or forward or if we need that additional detail. So
Could I say something?
absolutely.
Now, you know what, we're doing a lot of talking and designing for this, for the purpose of passing something that should have been defined. He should have come with everything all clear. And yes, it's improved from previous plans, but it's not our purview to do the designing on the fly during the meeting, because we really don't know unless we have the actual drawings, what is going to happen. And I'm concerned that we're just trying to accommodate and move ahead. And without that definition, we really don't know what we're approving.
From this drawing, what detail are you lacking?
So I'm just gonna
So,
chime
no,
in. So
went through this
if we had
first
looked at,
and I went through and said, okay, hey, I'm going to address all your concerns. Here are the list of things you guys were lacking last meeting. I addressed them. Now you're saying there's more things that are missing.
Marty, why don't you let Chris go? Because I think you're not helping yourself here. Let Chris give you an idea here of what you're looking at.
so Hank, I don't think I can annotate on this screen. So just point to the, so if you had the opportunity to see some of the other drawings prepared by some of the other folks on previous submissions, there's always just an innate bit of detail. But Hank, if you just go to the gable end there, just stay on that image and just use your cursor to point to it.
Yep, hold on just a second. I'll get you there.
So this drawing right here obviously doesn't show any gable siding, and it doesn't show the trim board that's actually under the eave overhang. It doesn't define what that is. It doesn't define that OG trim, that where the that rafter face meets the underside of the roof. So when you ask for level of detail, an architectural drawing would have lines on the drawing that show all of that to scale, and would have notes to clarify what those pieces and parts are. Additionally, the posts, if you look at, for example, at the front of your house, normally when posts come down and meet grade, they typically have some trim work where that meets grade, and there's some definition on that. Also, if you look on your front pilasters, there's some trim that sort of creates some level of detail. So none of that is evidence on this drawing. If you go back to the three-dimensional drawing, Hank, sorry to make you work for it tonight.
No, not a problem.
Are there gutters? No gutters. So on this drawing, again, you can start to see that, the 6x6 post. But then this drawing, if you can use your cursor, Hank, to point at the sort of faux pilaster on the edge of, now all the way back at the building face, you can see there's a white trim board on the corner there, and it almost makes a vertical. Make the vertical, Hank. Keep going to the left. There you go. So it almost looks like there's an implied 6-inch wide pilaster on the face back there. I can't tell if that's real or not, or is that a corner board, because it's really hard for me to tell what's going on. I think there's a water table on that drawing. I can see a black line at the base where the siding meets grade, but it's kind of hard to tell. This drawing, you can look at the top of the door wall. The sliding glass door does not have any trim over the top of it. Those are just things you can see in this drawing, but you could not see in your two-dimensional drawing. So those are the types of things that we look at, and that's the kind of detail that gets built up that gives us confidence that when we go out to look at the finished product, we know what's happening. Are the fascia boards at the eaves vertical, or are they indeed slanted like you're showing here? I think the rest of your house, they're actually vertical. This three-dimensional rendering is showing those it just tacked on to the end of the rafter, and the rafters weren't cut at an angle. So those are the kinds of things that just don't always compute. The 2D elevation shows something different.
These are part
And
of
how
the
do we
things.
capture all that into a motion where we really understand what we're going to get? That's our struggle. And, folks who do drawings for a living typically would encompass that into a set of drawings. So
for,
I do share Martha's concern with, again, how do we let this go? Hank, I really trust you and your department from an administrative standpoint. If we kind of sort of capture things, I do appreciate your eye to detail, and if it can be handled administratively, I certainly trust that. But I don't know how do you designate the line between what we approved and what administratively happens? I do share Martha's concern.
I think one of the things that you can do if you would have me, I mean, because you've got a motion on the table here, but what I would suggest is that if you make it as detailed as possible and it comes in and it does not match what this recording says and the concerns that were brought up, then it's going to have to go back to Mr. Zacharias for more detail before it gets through the permit stage. So what you would be approving is you would be approving not in concept, because in concept, everything has got a reasonable expectation. But the details here that are drawn, like on the rendering where you have the corner boards, those will be referenced on the plan with a detail for that. If you think they're 1x4, if you've got a top, like a top board where it's going to be 1x4, 1x4 on the bottom, he's going to have to use flashings for that. Some of that's not called out. If you're using 1x2 or on, to match a window, or using 1x4 to match what's on the front of the house on the gable, that would be part of the motion. Anything else that's not part of the motion, we wouldn't typically hold them to. There's no rafter ends, there's no tails that are coming back towards the house to create a soffit on the porch. So there's no detail for that. So I anticipate that this would just be a straight angled edge for the roof. And that's what we would look for on the last one. The posts look to me like they would be 6x6 trimmed because they're wrapped. So that's what that would look like. Or the posts aren't wrapped, but the trim boards are wrapped. So, I mean, that's what you would be using. I mean, that's what we would call out. And if there wasn't enough detail, Dwayne would send it back to him because he doesn't have enough detail to complete the project. He'd want to know what that is. And if it's any different than what was talked about tonight, then it would be back here. So it's up to you with what you would like to do. In the meantime, you do have a motion on the floor. If there's not enough detail on that motion, or you don't feel that there is, you can always amend the motion to make more detail.
And what happens if we forget something? That's just not good policy.
So any other discussion on the motion?
Would there be a
And
way
I-
for us to brainstorm and come up with a list of 1 through 20, or
You could do it right now.
is that
And
too?
I think that's good. And I was just going to ask just if someone could, my short-term memory obviously isn't so good. So could we restate the motion one more time? And then Steve, to your point, if there's that way, maybe we can add on if there's things that.
So
way that
are you asking for Mark to restate the motion, Chris?
I've kind of lost track of what the actual motion was, so I'm just trying to help everybody along here. If we could restate the motion, and then to Steve's point, we can make the final amendments and then see where we go.
Mark, did you want to take a whack at it, or do you want me to go with what I have here and read it for people?
Yeah, go ahead with what you have here.
Okay. Basically what I have is a motion, and again, it was amended by Jim. So we have a motion to issue a notice to proceed for this project as it generally meets standard number. And I think you said, what did you say, 4, 9,
I said 2.
2? Okay. Standard number 2. And that it encompass where the eaves line up all the way around, that the trim boards replicate the boards that are used on the front of the house in scale and size, and that the siding match on the gable end match what's used on the addition. And that's what I had. Oh, and that the unilock pavers were to be used only under that area covered by the roof and the addition. That's what I had. So from there, you can make amendments and add what you want clarification on.
I'd like
Did you
to
have-
add that the eve detail match the 2019 edition eve detail that it will be running, terminating into. That detail should be replicated around the perimeter, around the eve ends.
And Hank, just real quick, the reference to the siding on the gable. That's just they've indicated, Mr. Zacharias has indicated that we have an 8-inch exposure. And that it will just have that 8-inch on the gable, correct?
And you can add that to that as well.
Well, it's already designated as 8-inch.
Yeah, so,
We'll go with that, right?
yeah, it's on the rendering, the siding with the 8-inch wide pre-painted PPG wood.
Is there any detail for the soffit area?
There isn't a soffit on this.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't kick back and create a conventional soffit for the overhang.
How about the trim detail, the vertical trim and horizontal trim around the outside of the addition area? Is
That
that
was-
adequately shown?
I think what we did was covered that it had to replicate the area on the original house that was on the sided portion of the house as it existed. If anybody wanted to change that, you should do so now.
I'm fine with that.
So I guess, I think we've got all of the additions. Are there any other, at this point in time, we have a
Somebody,
motion? I'm sorry. go ahead.
somebody previously mentioned something about a base around the poles holding it up, the 6x6s. I don't know who did, but was that mentioned?
I think Chris alluded to a trim board or around the
Trim board.
bottom. Typically boards like that or typically posts are finished with a detail that may have one by surrounding the 6x6. And then typically on top of that, there's like a little cove or there's either that or some quarter round or something to trim out that top piece, but that's not shown on any of the details.
Is that required?
Nope.
This looks better.
That was more or less, there was a question on whether or not it was discussed, but it was not part of the motion.
So at this point in time, it sounds like we have all the pieces and parts in place for the motion. Do we have to vote on the addendum to that proposal first, Hank?
You
Or
have
that-
to, Steve and Mark have to accept the amendments and then you vote on the whole thing.
I'm okay with the amendment.
I accept the amendments.
And so at this point in time, we'll put this through the vote. So Steve, you're up first.
Yes.
Mark, you're up.
Yes,
Jim,
Yes.
Martha,
Nay,
Robert,
No,
and that leaves me, and I'm a no as well. So I don't know what to do now, Hank, because we have a even mix.
Then that's gonna, then it fails.
Okay.
So then you have to come up with a different, what you should do is you should come up with, if this is going to fail, you should come up with a motion to deny, list on there because it does not have X, Y, and Z. There should be a very clear guidance to Mr. Zacharias as to what he would need in order to make that come through.
Hank, I'm gonna speak because I don't know how to navigate this anymore, and I'm trying to give our
Okay.
applicant as much benefit as I can because I know they've been here before, but
You can
When it
also
comes-
make another affirmative motion with a different criteria. That's up to you.
I mean, the biggest thing that I struggle with is the lack of, just none of the drawings ever seem to coordinate across the thing. So we wrote a couple notes on the drawings, which I appreciate the detail. We did show a paper detail, but overall, when we really look at the 3-dimension to the 2-dimension, even the question of, for example, if you go back just to the picture of the front of the existing house, I can just kind of walk through a few other things. We can see that, the rafters protrude beyond the house, and then there's a horizontal soffit. So that necessitates a specific detail at the gable end of the house. We're matching the top of those rafter tails, but the rafter tails have a sloped soffit, which is not consistent with the existing house, and yet we made a motion to say they're going to be. But how do you get all that pulled off when you don't have drawings that really show us how to do that? And that's my struggle. And I'm trying to figure out is, how do we get to a place where, maybe it's just me, I just like to hear it from other people, if anybody else is sharing some of those concerns.
I'd like to make a suggestion, Chris.
Please, I'm looking for some help here.
I think that this might be a really good opportunity for Mr. Zacharias to employ a professional draftsperson who could put these drawings in order for him, expressing all of his needs, wants, and ideas, and create an appropriate and proper presentation for us to quickly and efficiently review and vote on.
And I would also like to just entertain, because I don't want to, is there a way that drawing, that would allow us to then, is tabling an option if the drawing comes back? Or what does
It's
that do
not
to
at
us?
this point.
No.
You need a decision.
Okay, thank you. Just
One
asking.
way or another, you need a
Okay.
decision.
I'll make a motion to deny based upon the inconsistencies between the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional drawings, the typos, and the lack of clarification from one drawing to the next as to exactly what is going to be built.
So just my question, is that the historic
This isn't
commission
your,
role?
now you're talking.
Point of order.
Inconsistency, can I just?
Point of order. This is a motion that has been made to be discussed by us. This is inappropriate for Mr. Zacharias to speak at this point.
Chris, you should have the board discussion, and then Mr. Zacharias can have a chance to respond before you take a vote.
That's fair. So I'm sorry now that I've been sufficiently distracted. So we have a motion on the floor and that's it right now. Did I ask for a second? I don't remember.
You did not.
I would like to ask if there's anybody who would second this motion.
I will second that.
Okay, so now we have an opportunity for discussion.
So from my point of view, here's the situation is, I'm not going to approve anything that I'm not clear about what is going to happen. This is about the integrity of this body, and we are representative of the city. And, I understand that there is improvement in this, but it's not enough improvement for me to be able to put my stamp on and say that I am behind this 100%. And that's why that's why people get professionals to do drawings if they are unable to do those drawings themselves. That's the best I can do at this point. I don't want to see anything happen to, the investment that the homeowner puts into this because things aren't clear. If he doesn't have it spec'd out properly, he may not get what he thinks he wants or is trying to build because it's not clear. So, we can't even help him if we don't know exactly what we're voting on. So.
I support Martha's views completely.
So can I make it, is this my turn to talk?
When the chair will recognize you when it's your turn, he may want to go through the rest of the commission first.
I was just gonna say that, Hank, if we could just roll through the rest, then we can take a look at, then we'll have that conversation. Steve, do you have any additional comments?
No comments.
Mark, do you have any comments?
No,
Jim, is there any clarification or comments that you could add?
I guess I would make an amendment, offer an amendment to Martha's motion. I think in addition to the verbiage she used describing the inconsistency between the drawings, I would also like to just list out some specific drawings and information that we would prefer to have included, so the homeowner can better be prepared in the event that this is denied. That would include window details, window specifications beyond simply Marvin windows. We'd like to see a window sample. It's not in the packet, so it hasn't been provided to us. Roof eave details, flashing details, roofing materiality specification, not just asphalt shingle. We like to see the color and the
They're gonna
style.
match the house.
I'm sorry.
They're to match the house.
Can we just
Go
stay
ahead.
with the commission and then Mr. Zacharias will get an opportunity to comment?
Yep.
And then all trim details for the proposed columns, trim details for any corner boards or trim around the existing, or I guess I'm not sure if it's an existing condition or not. Then I also like to see a floor plan and a reflective ceiling plan.
I'm sorry, what was the last two? A floor plan and a what?
Reflective
called the
ceiling plan.
We'll explain that in 1 second. Jim, I'd like to just make one amendment to that, just because we're just trying to get design intent. I would probably, and I'm not sure what you meant by flashing details. I'm probably just more concerned about profiles and how things alignment, and then dimensions, for example, like eave overhangs and things like that. I would leave the flashing details probably to the building department, but that would just be the only minor modification I'd make.
Okay, yeah, I could argue that, but that's fair. Yeah.
It's, if you want to argue, that's fine. I just was looking at, I just want to make sure that I'm just doing.
Flashing details might be redundant if we're asking for the other details. There should be flashing included there, but I'm thinking of things like drip edges that would be visible.
Gotcha.
And just
Perfect.
in the effort to get a complete and full package, so we're not back doing this again.
Okay.
So at this point in time, does anybody else have any discussion points? I'll give Mr. Zacharias an opportunity to speak before we make our vote. Go ahead, Mr. Zacharias. I know you had reflected ceiling plan is an architectural convention where we understand if the underside of the roof is being finished or not. Is there any light? It'll also usually demonstrate if there's any lighting or things of that nature, just so that we understand the overall design intent. And then the floor plan is really about dimensional controls. I was alluding to the fact that there was a little bit of I had some confusion so that we understood how far away from the existing building and things were and how those dimensional controls were being handled. So do you have any additional things you'd like to discuss right now?
So that's a laundry list of things that you're wanting me to come back with. It is, I don't know if Martha was here, but I was here a month or, probably 2 or 3 months ago, if not more, gave this proposal. Everybody seemed somewhat fine with it, except for the lack of details, and the lack of details were these 4 things I addressed. I come and I address those details, and you give me a laundry list of other things that aren't. So I'm going to go ahead and do this next round. Then you guys are probably going to find another list of things that aren't right. So I get the inconsistencies between the one drawing and the other one. Why don't I just take that 1 page out? Then there is no inconsistencies.
Then you have no detail at all.
And approve the render.
So I understand, but I also am going to, and I don't have the meeting minutes in front of me, so someone please correct me. But I think we discreetly discussed the presentation of professional drawings scaled with appropriate detail. This has been before us actually more than once, maybe 3 times in total. And at each instance, there are commission members who have discussed the ability to have a scaled drawing with, and we've discussed maybe architectural drafts people or builders with those characteristics or professional architects to be able to provide those things. So seems to be the consistent theme that is causing.
So this is the
lack
first
of
time
detail.
requesting an architectural type of professional. Well, like I said, I have this rendering that's way more clear than the previous stuff I gave, which I admit was very blurry and not clear whatsoever. So I hired this company to do this for me, thinking from a historic perspective that you guys already approved that the overall theme was okay. Then the lack of details that I listed, siding, pavers, windows, columns, were not addressed. So again, I addressed what you asked for the last meeting. Now you're coming up with another laundry list of items.
So Hank, could I ask a couple questions, please?
You certainly can.
And I don't have a copy of an application in front of me for our Historic District Commission. Does that give us any indication of the types of materials? I mean, we could simply go to the next application if we wanted to see an example of, or any of Mr. Ostrowski's drawings that the commission has seen as to what we think pretty comprehensive drawings. We can even go back to any of those who've been on this commission for a while have seen Mr. Heller present, and even though those are all hand-drawn sketches, he provides enough clarity and level of scale expression.
You guys.
How do we help
the
the applicant?
applicants? I'm a homeowner trying to get something approved.
Right.
I don't know what you guys see. Maybe you could share some samples of what your expectations are. But this is the first time after 2 times coming that you need a certain type of drawing now from an architect.
I don't think that they intimated at all that it had to be from an architect. They said architectural drawing, which is the type of drawing that it should be. Whether it's done by a draftsman, it doesn't have to be done with anybody with a seal. But basically what happened is that every time that it comes back, there's a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. If you would have a drafts person or an architect, not saying you have to hire an architect, but you're still held to the plans are still held to the same standard. If you take a look at in the ordinance, which is site plan approval, which is what this in effect is, it gives you a list completely of the types of things that you have to have on there. You have to have a drawing with all elevations, all dimensions, floor plan, including dimensions.
So that I would imagine during the permit process and the building process, those would be addressed.
They would definitely have to be addressed, but they're supposed to be addressed at this point. And the problem that I'm getting from the commission is they have not been.
And again, this is the first time they're saying they need that type of level of detail, where the last time I met, they said, oh, we just need these things. What were your siding colors? What were the pavers? What are the windows? Other than that, we're okay with it. Now I'm getting another 5 to 10 things of, well, I need the details of this. OG, I need this detail. Well, why didn't you tell me this last time?
I can tell you that these plans would not pass the building department.
Perhaps,
they're drawn.
well, let's cross that bridge in the building department.
They're not going to pass this. If you know, gathering on what you're seeing here, they're not going to pass this either. So what I
I'd
guess,
rather deal with the building department because I don't have to wait another month to talk to these guys.
unfortunately, you have to go here before you can get to the building department. Just like if you weren't in the historic district, you would have to go to the planning commission.
Well, how do I get my house out of the historic district? How do I opt out of being tied?
You don't
to
opt out.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm sure I could find a lawyer to figure that one out.
That's up to you.
Can I make a comment here to Mr. Zacharias? I would like to point out that it is the homeowner's responsibility to know before submitting an application what the requirements for the application are. It is not the responsibility of the commission to walk you through it step by step. I could point out that you would obviously have saved a lot of time and a lot of aggravation if you had consulted someone knowledgeable, not necessarily an architect, but someone knowledgeable about the requirements of this application. And all this could have been resolved long ago.
Well, I asked Hank a number of times when I submitted the drawings, is it sufficient? He gave me some guidelines of the scales and things like that. And like I said, last time I came, everything seemed fine except these details that I came to you today with. Now all of a sudden, that's not even good enough. So if you told me all of this stuff that you needed last time, I'd be okay, fine. You know, I didn't deliver it, but we were at some level of agreement the last time I met with you and this team here, and you said, just address these 4 things and we should be fine. And I addressed them. Now I'm getting another laundry list of, oh, now you need these other types of drawings. Now you need these other levels of details. Why didn't you tell me this last time then? That's the aggravating part. Because now I'm going to address these next time, and who knows how long it's going to take to get an architect to draw these things up for me. I don't even know how much it's going to cost. Then I'm going to come to you guys in a month or 2 or whenever the hell I can do this. Then you're going to say, this isn't good either.
I don't know.
The concept, you said this is fine. So if there's other
Yeah,
drawings,
you know what? If
if I
Mr.
need,
Zacharias,
hold
if
on,
we didn't
hold on
approve
for a
a
minute.
motion,
hold
it
on.
wasn't approved.
Don't you think it's my turn to
No,
talk
no,
yet?
no.
Mr. Zacharias, I think that
You're
we're trying to
yelling
come
at us,
to a
we can
point
yell
here.
right back at you. You're
So
putting
let's-
words in the commission's mouth.
You said, you
That
said
is not the
to
case
wait
for
your
what
turn to
happened at
talk,
the
and I
last
waited my
meeting.
turn to talk.
Okay, so let's try to reel this back in a bit. So obviously, I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to some of the comments, and I guess I'd ask you to let's wrap those comments up, and then we can hopefully try to tone down a little bit of the emotion, and we'll try to get this thing back in order.
Mr. Chair, I guess could I also ask that if this is a no vote that goes through, and Mr. Zacharias is forthcoming with a higher level of plans that's more consistent with what we typically see, would the commission be interested in a special meeting in order to help Mr. Zacharias get through it a little bit quicker?
So I certainly would do that, because again, the consistent theme that I think most of the people on this committee have talked about is the inconsistency of information. And if that certainly helps to this, I would make myself available for a special. I need to leave it, Hank, for you to propose times and dates for that, and we can certainly try to accommodate that request.
Yeah, depending on what Mr. Zacharias can come up with. I mean, I would like to make an effort to accommodate him if possible.
So like I said, I understand the inconsistencies between page 2 or 3 in the front page. Other than that, nobody's seen to point out any other inconsistencies or any problems.
So I would like to go on record to say that I would love to pull the meeting minutes, and I don't have them in front of me, unfortunately, but I know for a fact that there is a desire for a more professional scale drawing that expressed more detail the relationships of this addition to your house, and that if that drawing were present right now, would address a lot of the inconsistencies that we have. So I would like to say that I know that that's been brought up numerous times, and that is the struggle. Because do we build it for page 3 or 4? And us designing it, and I would agree with Marcia that it's not our job to design it. It's for the applicant to propose a complete, thoughtful picture of what they think this thing is so that we can do it. And if you built page 3 and we thought it was page 4, how do we resolve that with the information we have in front of us? I think a drawing that is more complete, whether you need all of those views or not, I think can be certainly there can be proper communication maybe with less views than were indicated, but there has to be something that's consistent and accurate that allows us to be able to do our job.
Mr. Chairman, just because I did pull it up here, the notice of denial that was issued for the meeting on 2/2/21 specifically says, motion was made by Commissioner Lebo, seconded by Commissioner Fink, to deny the proposal for 26405 Henry as presented, as the plans lack substantial detail and were incomplete. The vote was unanimous, and it said the applicant may resubmit for commission review or under certain circumstances for administrative review when the commission suggestions have been made. The commission suggestions are: add detail for columns, siding, and trim. Show pavers and material. Label all materials and sizes. Show roof tie-in and pine line. So those are the details that we're still missing on the plan.
And from this front page, I think I addressed all the things that you asked for the last time we met.
Well, I'm not going to get into a point-by-point argument because I would disagree with that statement. And again, it's not our purveyance to design it all, but we've already expressed things such as.
Already seen the minutes of 2/2/21 were wrong.
No, what we're saying is that that was the notice that you were sent.
Yes.
Okay, so those things are not reflected, all of those things are not reflected on the drawings that you've provided this evening, and that's what the commission is
All
saying.
right, so the siding I addressed, pre-painted nickel finish, PPG wood, 8-inch wide planks. The pavers I addressed. The windows I addressed, the columns I addressed, the trim I addressed.
What size is the trim boards for the windows?
2 inches.
Where does it say that?
I'll draw it on right now.
Well, that's not, okay. And then the corner boards, what size is that?
Well, you guys didn't ask for those details in the last meeting.
Yeah, we did, actually, the notice that came
It wasn't
out.
in the minutes.
So the meeting minutes express trim details. I would consider those, and anybody who is if you talk to somebody who is an architectural draftsperson or builder would probably construe column details, the OG trim details, all of that is trim details. I think that's a pretty generic term, and I think it falls under what we're looking for.
So you're going to deny this based on trim details.
Yep.
So can I maybe suggest or recommend that I get the approval to move ahead with the structure? Because I have a tarp on the back of my house. Hopefully I don't get pain or damage to my house, where I can at least start building the roof line. And then now it will give you all the details for the trim and everything that you desire.
Mr. Zacharias, may I speak up? First, I want to acknowledge you because you have certainly
Done your very best to provide what you think, understand we've been asking for, but because you are not an architectural draftsman and you don't have that kind of background, you are out of your depth here, and it's not a bad thing. There's nothing to be embarrassed or angry about. It's just that we require, being a representative of this government in Huntington Woods, we are required to be very sure about what we are okaying. And as I said before, there are too many inconsistencies for at least me personally to put my seal of approval on. What we're trying to do here is help you get the very best addition that you can build. We're not trying to just deny, but there are things that you can't do or haven't been able to do over these several meetings that that need to be done. So that's why I have made the motion that I've made. And I suggest that you find an architectural draftsperson who can help you with those kinds of things so that you can get what you want and so that we can see the details of what your vision is through the eyes of a professional.
All right,
Mr.
so-
Chair,
Yes, Robert.
I move the previous question. It's time to end this. This has gone on far too long. We need a 2/3 vote to end this.
I thank you, Robert. I would agree. So we have a motion.
Sorry, but Robert, house doesn't have a tarp over the back of it, and I'm trying to do what I can to at least minimum. Can I at least?
I move the previous question. This is Robert's rules.
Mr. Chair, at this point in time, you can do that. You know, you should take the vote. The question's been moved. And then if there's additional discussion, you can entertain additional discussion. I would tell you that whatever way this goes, I'm certainly available to go over some samples of plans with Mr. Zacharias of projects that have been successfully completed in the historic district, if that would help him.
Mr.
Or
Chair, I'm sorry, Hank, I just wanted to point out that a while ago, Jim made some amendments and I did not get a chance to accept those, but I do accept his suggestions and also the chair's suggestions about the particular things that needed to be added.
Yes, do I.
So at this point in time, we do have a motion on the table, and I think we'll close the discussion. I think we've had a lot of discussion, and it's time for our roll call vote. Let me see who's up first on my screen here. Mark, you are up first.
Yes,
Wait, what are we voting on? What is the motion?
motion to deny and the guidance that you gave him. So
Okay.
he'll get a motion. If this passes, he'll get another motion to deny listing the things that you've talked about, which are the same things that were on the last one.
Very good. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, Mark was a yay. Jim,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes,
Robert,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So at this point in time, again, the motion was denied because of the lack of sufficient detail to move this forward. So I would recommend, Hank, I appreciate your offer to, and even if the applicant wanted to stay on the call, because there's going to be another application that has some documentation that may show you some of the roadmap of the types of detail that really help get these applications moved forward. So thank you. So at this point in time, we'll move on to our second agenda item, which is a matter of the addition to the Pete residence. Yes, my eyes are getting bad, sorry, at 26329 York Road. And I see Mr. Pete is available. So the floor is here, Mr. Pete, if you'd like to go ahead and present your application.
Sure, yeah. Hank, am I able to share the drawing, or would you prefer I just describe it first and then do that?
Actually, I can put it on or you can put it on. What's your pleasure?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind driving it just so I can point out
You
some
can
stuff.
drive.
Okay, all right. But before I do that, I'd just like to say hello to everyone. Myself, Jason, and my wife Michelle and son Max moved to Huntington Woods about 2 years ago. Prior to this, I had spent 20 years in the West Village Historic District in Detroit, where I restored a Foursquare there over that time period, as well as another bungalow 2 doors down from me. And so, you know, I appreciate everything these boards do to help preserve districts like this. I've probably lived in others, and all of my work in the last 20 years has been in various parts of the Cass corridor throughout 3 different historic districts. So I really value these kind of, conversations and opportunities to be a steward to a house like this. And so we've been in the home for about 2 years now. We've lived in the home. The pandemic has forced us to get really intimate with the home. And we're proposing a very small addition. It might go on record as being the smallest you've perhaps entertained at 64 square feet. But I'll share it with you. It's at the rear of the home, and I think you've probably seen the drawings. Let me try and share here. Yeah, so this first sheet just shows a couple images of the home. This is obviously the front facade here. All of the original windows are still intact. All the upper sashes are leaded glass and they're in beautiful shape. And the only thing I'll note here is that all 4 corners of this hip roof have one projecting 3rd floor dormer. I don't show a drawing of the front or the 2 side elevations to reference this, but they were originally cedar shake. They still are underneath what was a wide cementitious siding. And part of this this addition will be restoring all 4 of those back to the original cedar shake. The cedar shake is still under there. I haven't started to open it up yet. My assumption is it's not going to be in great shape, but I'll assess that once I get up there and start working. This is the rear of the home, and this is the facade where the addition is going to be taking place. That's that dormer I mentioned that has cedar shake underneath it with a 5-inch exposure and woven corners. So that will either be in good shape and restored, or will be replicated with brand new red cedar shake. The back of the home is all brick that matches the front facade, and the sides, it's all of this textured brick, multicolor textured fired brick. This here is a 1-story bump out off the original kitchen. It's a breakfast nook. And it has a flat roof, always did. There's a door that walks out from a bedroom onto it. There's no evidence of a railing, but there must have been a railing up there at some point. And so I point that out here because it'll be part of the our proposal. And the original home on the 1st floor, not that we get into interiors, but the original home had just 3 rooms. There was a living room, a kitchen, and a dining room. At some point in the 1960s, the kitchen was divided in half, and it was done so to provide a half bath on the 1st floor. It's a pretty good size home, and it only has 1 bathroom on the 2nd floor. And so this is the existing kind of floor plan. And this was originally the kitchen, if you can see my cursor, this whole back corner of the house with a breakfast nook. And it was partitioned off and a half bath was carved out of it. It turned the kitchen into a very narrow galley style kitchen. Extremely small, kind of, the sink, stove, refrigerator, and about 4 cabinets is all. It's not original, they were homemade cabinets. And so I mention this because the proposed addition is to simply take the breakfast nook, keep it as a breakfast nook, but extend this rear wall 9 feet to the it would be towards the side lot, 9 feet, and return it back to the home. So essentially double the size of the breakfast nook, if you can see here. And what that'll allow us to do is remove the partitions that were added to the kitchen, restore the kitchen to its original footprint. The refrigerator, it's kind of something I geek out about, but that's where the ice box and the ice door originally is on the exterior of the home. So the fridge is going back where the ice box had been. The arrange is going back where the arrange was originally. The original vent is still up in the ceiling. It's been covered up.
Cool.
Return to that space, but we still have a need for a half bath on the 1st floor. There still remains just 1 bath in the house. So this proposal to do an addition, this small addition, is to pick up a half bath in this portion, and then it'll pick up the back door into what is a very small, it's labeled here as a mudroom. It's a 7 foot deep or long by 5 foot wide hallway, but it provides us the opportunity to come in from the garage where we enter the home most of the time with groceries and everything. Be able to come into the home and then proceed into the kitchen. Right now, the back door is where the sink is, And when you come in this back door, you're right at the foot of the stairs. You have to go left or right to go in the living room or kitchen. It's a very, very clustered area. And so we're proposing to do this small addition, again, to restore the kitchen and to keep the breakfast nook as is. We didn't want to sacrifice the breakfast nook to create a kitchen. Those windows are far too large and far too important for light in the kitchen. We didn't want to disturb those.
Yeah.
So that's what that looks like from an elevation. Here's proposal here to restore the cedar shake. The one thing I'll notice is right now that back breakfast nook existing is brick, all the way up to the soffit. This brick I have tried to match. I've, all my work in Detroit with contractors, I've worked with a lot of different masons and brick companies. It's a very unique brick, both in how it's fired, but also the texture of it. And given that we need to tie it back into the rest of the facade, it's impossible to match this brick properly. And so what I'm proposing is to instead reclaim the brick above a 4-foot height. So leave the existing brick on the breakfast nook, but reclaim it around the windows, bring it down from the soffit, and use that same brick then to around the new addition here to create a 4-foot banding that's consistent. And then using the material that's already historic to the home, the cedar shake, continue up from that 4-foot height with cedar shake. We'll be removing just one window, and that's going to be that one window in the breakfast nook. This window here, which will now be a part of an interior wall. So that window will be removed, but it is the original wavy glass. So that glass is going to be reclaimed and it's going to be used and given to the window company. The window company is making one. This is the bathroom window. This is a single swing casement window. There are 2 others on the front facade of the home that are single in-swing casements, all wood. So this is being made by Brooks Lumber in Detroit. And they bought out Lumber and Millworks Window Company a number of years ago. So they do custom windows, wood windows. So they'll be using that. And Savante Restoration is going to take the glass for this. It's not shown on this drawing, but they're going to be replicating the same pattern of the leaded glass using that same glass.
Nice.
And that's consistent with the two casement leaded glass windows on the front of the house. This is going to be a new door, but all wood door. Working with Ray Hansen and Antil Door, and he's made, I know, a number of windows here in Huntington Woods, or I'm sorry, a number of doors. And the pattern for this door is we're retaining the upper story door, which is a very unique pattern of a single panel with a light and then 3 panels below it on the second floor. We're doing a similar pattern with 2 panels below it, a slightly larger light to let more light into that mudroom. But the stiles and rails, the dimensions of this door, the reason I didn't provide it here is because it's being taken from this existing door. Same is true. You'll see that, for instance, I don't have detail on the gutter on here, but that's because we're following the existing roof line of the existing soffits. Everything's being brought over from the existing breakfast nook. And so that will simply be wrapped around. It has a K-style gutter right now, and we'll be able to, and we'll just be continuing that around. This basement window remains. That's a steel, 3-light basement window that doesn't change. And the new addition will be on a crawl space, but it will be conditioned and open to the basement below the breakfast nook.
Very reasonable.
I think that's, I'm willing to listen to any questions that might be had or anyone's.
Hank, you're up. And you're muted.
Sorry, I was enjoying
Common
listening.
problem.
I was enjoying listening to him.
No taker's not going to be able to read your lips.
Yeah. Basically, with this particular house, I mean, what he's looking for is an extremely modest addition to the rear portion of it. It doesn't come into play as far as lot coverage. It doesn't come into play as far as maximum house size. What it does come into play for is whether or not it's appropriate for this particular type of house. The match of the brick is important. If you can't match the brick and match the grout, you've got a problem from the get-go, and the effort of reclaiming the brick in order to come up with a 4-foot coating around the bottom portion of it would make sense. The idea of the cedar shake shingles on that would help be part of the thing that would differentiate the old from the new. So in essence, they're meeting one of the standards by doing that, whether it's inadvertent or not. It allows them to do that. The details that he's showing are replicating details that are already on the house existing. It's worthy of note that they would reclaim the wavy glass, because that's like gold. You can't find it, and when you do, to reuse it is a nice feature. But basically, one would say that this would meet the standards, or could meet the standards, depending on what your vote is, for a certificate of appropriateness based on the design characteristics that were chosen and the way that it was presented. And the drawings were detailed, hopefully adequately enough for you to determine what it is that you would be voting on this evening. We have no problems with that whatsoever.
Thank you, Hank. So now it's time for some commissioner questions. I'm going to mix it up a bit. Robert.
Thank you. Wow, what a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much for that. And what a difference from West Village to Huntington Woods. I look forward to the day that West Village is as cool, as good as Huntington Woods is.
I won't take a vote there.
Oh, wow. Well, it's a great project, and I admire you for doing it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I like your exposing of the original materials. I think it's not only important, it's really crucial to the well-being of a historic district to show what we have and to do it in a nice format as you're doing. Great project. I hope it goes well for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Jim.
All right. Yeah, echo Robert's sentiment. Great project. Couple of questions that I have. The second floor, you're essentially going to be creating a occupiable roof across this addition and the existing breakfast nook. Is that correct? There's a door above the current breakfast nook from the second floor?
That's correct. Yeah, that's an original door. Yep, that walks out onto that roof. Yep.
Okay. I see that the windows that are adjacent to that door are, the sill looks pretty low, like it's almost at the sill level of that door. Again, this would probably come into a building department purview. I'm looking at the photos relative to the drawing. I see a little bit of inconsistency there, but that's something I think you'll want to address before going to the building department, as there's if you're going to occupy that, one, you need to, double check your railing height. Two, that glass in that window would be in question if it's that low to the ground. That's more just a comment, something I noticed in the drawings. My only other comment is more of discussion. I know it's late, but would we rather see the breakfast nook left intact with all of its brick intact, and then the addition wrapped in cedar to further kind of illustrate that this is not original? We can still, it can still be appropriate to the house. However, does it want to be its own volume rather than trying to mimic make it look like a wider volume? Again, that's just for discussion. I have no problem with the project as a whole. I like the detailing, et cetera. And the fact that the addition is on the back of the house really kind of, kicks it into the territory of, preference and, what would be correct. So, just to kind of throw it out there, if I were looking at this on the front of the house, I would absolutely think that volume would want to be differentiated, as opposed to trying to make it look like it's one large volume. And then the last question, maybe I missed it at the beginning. You were talking about the dormer that we're going to reestablish cedar shake on the dormer on the rear of the house. Is there currently cedar shake on the other dormers, on the other three roof dormers?
Yeah,
cedar as
it's
well?
a four-sided hip roof, and all four sides have a similar double window dormer. And all of them were originally cedar. The cedar is still underneath them, but all of them are currently wrapped in that, it's been painted pink. I think it's just faded over time. And it's likely as an asbestos cementitious tile. So, I'll be having to work with someone to abate that. Yep. Yeah, but that's been applied.
Yeah, I guess I just want to ask, is the intention to reestablish the cedar shake on all four of the dormers, or we're just talking about the rear dormer at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's, for a couple of reasons. One, that all that work flows together. So when I have the group out there and they're set up with scaffolding on, they'll be going and doing all four. And as I mentioned, I didn't do drawings of those because I figured I'll show it on the back. It's an existing condition. It's an existing cedar shake. But to be honest with you, because the roof had been done after, the last time the roof was done, it was done after that was done. It wasn't properly flashed at those points. So not only will I be restoring the cedar shake, but I'll make sure that that gets properly flashed, underneath the cedar shake as it should be, as opposed to right now, as I peel off that asbestos siding, the flashing has been pushed underneath it is on top of the cedar. Yep. So that'll all be properly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you. No other comments.
You had asked about two other items. One was the height of that window. The two windows that will now be underneath the new addition's flat roof. I think it's just a perception, the way the picture is taken from the ground looking up. The drawing is 100% accurate. The sill of that window off the roof is about 23 inches up. So it's not at the deck level. But you raise a good point that it may have to be tempered, and whether or not that's a safety or code item. Those two windows, just for reference, are at the stair landing. As you go up the stair and then hit a landing and then continue up to the second floor. That's where those two windows are. And then finally, I'll just mention that I certainly, I hired an architect to put my stuff on paper and to put it to scale. I did all the drawings myself, and I certainly worked with a couple designers that I've worked with on other projects. We played a lot with that idea you mentioned. We started with that idea. Let's keep the breakfast nook brick. Let's not disturb that because there's quite a bit of money to reclaim all that. All the mortar's in great shape. And yet, at the end of the day, the scale of the addition is almost an equal size box. And then we played with so many different ways of siding that, of cladding it, and with things other than brick. And it always appeared as a very awkward, you had a brick square box and then another box that either had, we tried playing off from there's a very little bit of stucco on the front, in the upper dormers, some of the half timbering, we played with some of those details. At the end of the day, none of them worked well. So I'm just letting you know, that's kind of where we went to this idea of using the brick and tying it in. I certainly don't want to create a false sense of history there where we're trying to make the new addition and the old look like one. That is then misleading, but I think at the end of the day, I felt that was the most sympathetic way of handling the materials. So, yeah.
Anything else, Jim? All set?
No, all set.
Martha?
Thank you. Very nice presentation. And I'm really quite pleased with the work that you're doing on this. I am intrigued by what Jim was proposing as well. In past projects in the historic district, sometimes we discuss the possibility of a setback on what is being added so that there's a clear understanding that one is the old and the other is the new. And the idea of leaving the original wrapped in the original brick and then having a little bit of a setback on the new part might work better to define the old from the new. But it's just a thought. I hadn't thought about it until Jim brought it up, but then I remembered some of the older issues that we had dealt with many years ago. And of course, I know a setback would be kind of a little bit of an issue with regards to your interior space, but that's a possibility as well. Other than that, everything looks great to me. Are you sure that the existing roof is going to be strong enough for people to be out on. That's
Yeah,
one
it's a-
thing
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's 2x6. We'll certainly, as we get into it, it only spans less than 8 feet.
Yeah.
As we get into this project, as we demo the ceiling underneath it and the roof on top of it, because we'll have to put a new roof on the addition
Right.
as well as tie it all together. If it
Right.
needs to be strengthened, or if there are certain components of it that are rotting or showing any signs of that, we'll certainly strengthen them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha. Mark?
The only comment I have is to agree with Robert. The clarity and detail of the application are definitely refreshing.
Thank you, Mark. Thank Mr. Ginta. I know his work well, so it's
Yeah.
good. Steve, any comments?
Only that I appreciate your thoughtfulness and sensitivity. It seems like everything is very deliberate and has a purpose. And I find it to be wonderful. I'm not as concerned about some of the issues that have been discussed in as much as the additions in the back of the house and not visible at all from the street. I think it needs to be more reflective of your needs. It leaves a little more leeway for that. And I think it's executed just fantastically. So.
Yeah, and I'll just, one quick thing, I like the solution with the brick banding. I think it probably does a nicer job of tying it together. And I think some of the expression is enough different that I think it's a better solution. So I like it. And at this point in time, we're just going to move right on to public participation. Hank, I don't see anybody else on the call who might want to participate. Am I missing people on the call?
No, Mr. Zacharias is still on, but he isn't in front of the screen, and it's his opportunity to speak on this project. So you should feel
Okay.
free to close it if nobody wants to speak.
Okay, at this point in time, I'll close public participation. And I'm looking for a motion from my fellow commissioners. I can't make a motion, can I? Because I will, but,
No,
Martha, you put your hand up. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'll move to approve with a certificate of appropriateness.
Can you just pick a standard that you feel is just,
I could if I had them in front of me. Can someone help me out? God,
2 looks good to me.
2?
do?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for a second to Martha's motion.
Second.
I don't know who got there first, so who do we want to, Jim, were you first? Sure, Jim's
think I beat
first. Okay, so we'll do the roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Robert,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And again, just one brief comment. Thank you very much for the sensitive dialogue, thorough presentation and drawings. It makes our job much easier, so thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Best of luck. Thanks. I know it'll be great hearing you speak about it.
Stop by anytime. Say hello.
I'm right down the street. I walk by every day. I'll thanks. Hank, let's see here. Let's just see, is there any other business that we have to attend to this evening?
there's no other business that we have for this evening. Your last opportunity for public participation is up, and then we would have nothing else for you.
So if there's any, again, one more call for public participation. Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we'll close the public participation and we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Martha. Do we have to have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, I'm sure it's all ayes. Aye.
Uh,
Mark, aye. Right, it's unanimous. We're all
Aye.
waving hands aye. So thanks very much, Hank, for your help with this. And thank you, everybody on the commission. I always appreciate your help as I try to navigate this. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a great night.
Hey,
Good
Hank,
night.
before
Yes.
you go, I think we should commandeer Mr. Pete. He could run like little mini workshops on how to get through the HDC